right now. Hi everyone, my name is Bart Smikla and I will be host for our today's community call. I want to remind everybody about our code of conduct, which we can summarize as be excellent to each other. As I don't see anyone new, or actually I see, so there will be a time to small introduction. So if you are new and want to introduce yourself, in like a few minutes, there will be a time to do that. I think we can start with the billing review because we didn't do it the last. Oh, add your name to our agenda if you are attending this call, please. And then let's start with the billing review. I don't see. So in last 2 weeks, wait, it's not wanted.
Nice. There's the VDF. Or there's our attempt at flipping over, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's after April 1st, right? That curve?
Yeah.
Yep, that would be the flip.
Nice.
And unflip.
So we've spent $2.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm a few minutes late.
Hey, Tim.
Let me pull up my equivalent of that and compare.
Oh, perfect. Let's go back.
It's just loading, very slow.
No worries.
My laptop is just, I have so many tabs open.
There also will be a topic about the adding namespace build. I tried to play a little bit of that, but I had some problems.
Sorry, what days are we looking at here? I can't quite see it.
1st April until
1st of April to 14th.
Although you said we didn't review billing last week, we covered the last 4 weeks.
Oh yeah, sorry. Not much difference.
All right, sorry, what are the dates now? 18 March?
Yes, exactly. But this is only
so cool. My graph looks very much similar to yours. My total is, I see 2954 total.
So it's 29.
Okay, easy enough to be off by the tallies, the units that are being tallied.
Yeah, indeed. So we spent like $280 for class, 7 for compute engine, $72 for private logging, $2 for. Okay, so I think that looks fine.
$70 in logs. Yikes! Wow, this is where it gets interesting. Now we can start looking at, are we actually spending things in a reasonable way? I think it is interesting that the downloads is obviously the lion's share of where we're going, and that was only for those days that we flipped the GCR.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, I mean, it's everything we expected it to be, right?
I think so.
All right.
So just a link to that billing report, that part, the meeting notes. I feel like that's not discoverable from the repository.
It's hard because I myself I didn't understand.
Hey, Tim, can you mute when you're not talking? I'm getting it. Thank you. Sorry, could you say that again, Bart?
I didn't understand what you were saying about.
The billing report that you were showing, can you paste the link to that in chat? Because I don't have that in this laptop's history. And it made me realize I don't think it's actually linked anywhere.
I think it was some link. Okay, never mind. Let's switch to another topic. Is there anybody who would like to introduce himself or herself?
I can go. This is my first time here, if that's okay. Hello, I'm Aditya. This is my first time in the working group, but you might have seen me around in the Kubernetes community. I've been in the community for a couple of years now. I currently am a senior site reliability engineer at Red Hat, and I would like to see how I can contribute. So nice to see you all.
See you.
Welcome.
It's great to see you here.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, so let's jump into our action item review. Let's start with the container image promoter update from Linus.
Hi, yeah, so I mean, there hasn't been a whole lot of updates because, you know, we're after the flip happened and we rolled it back, we've been trying to unravel any other lingering dependencies that we're unaware of, which caused the rollback in the first place. Other than that, that's an ongoing thing right now. Other than that, I could say the backup jobs have been restarted. They've been running fine. And I've been clearing out the old time-stamped backups. I think that's about it. We expect the next flip to happen soon, but I can't really give any guaranteed dates right now. We're hoping to do it on a Monday, so it'll either have to be next Monday at the earliest, or the Monday after that. The reason for that is because the rollout or the flip itself takes a number of days. Typically, it should take 4 days, and we want to catch any errors during the work week. Last time we did this, it was on April 1st, which was a Wednesday, so we were actually very lucky in catching errors on the Friday afternoon Pacific time when that happened. So
Yes, very lucky.
Yeah, but we will be posting updates to any scheduling changes on the, I guess I haven't been posting on Slack, but I have been posting on like Kubernetes Dev, SIG release, mailing lists. So you should see updates there.
Great, thank you. Okay, so my first item is adding billing per namespace. There's not much progress because I face some issue. I don't want to work on the live document, so I try to clone it and play with this, but I have some error, very not informative, so data set configuration error without any information. So I assume it's related with some kind of permissions. Maybe Tim, do you know if I need to have some more permissions to clone the billing report and play with it, or?
I have no idea. Justin set that all up. I have not touched the billing report. The auditor accounting group is supposed to have enough permissions to do all of this accounting. So if there's a permission that you're missing, we can figure it out and add it to the accounting group. But I don't know off the top of my head what it would be.
So I will add to communicate with Justin and ask, actually, and we can try to solve this quickly. Okay, so another update from me about automating DNS reconciliation is, as we discussed with Tim yesterday, I tried the idea was to use some bash script which would be run in the container with the sidecar container of git sync, and whenever the directory of DNS changes, the bash script would call the octodns to reconcile the DNS records. The problem is I feel like this would be a little bit hacky too much, and I spent some time trying to understand the pro jobs and how we could achieve this with pro jobs, and it looks like it should be easier. But my problem which I faced is I don't understand how we can connect the octodns, which needs the service account credentials, with the pro secret. So this is the thing which, if anybody here.
So we can use this workload identity feature, which basically says the Kubernetes native service account can act as a Google service account without having tokens for it. Basically, we'll use the YDC from the cluster as the authentication. So we can do that. We've done that for a few other things like Prow, where we've enabled other clusters, even outside of our own territory, to be able to do this.
Yeah, and that also I found the documentation about it, but my problem is I see in the octodns configuration there is a point where I need to put the credential JSON file, and I don't know how to, like force the octodns to just use the service account.
Got it. It shouldn't need the JSON file because I can run it as myself without a JSON file, right? I can run it as my own, G-Cloud auth login. So there must be an equivalent.
Okay, great. So then it should be easy. I will try to just create the post submit job and like follow the documentation for workload identity. And if I will have some problems, then I will write about them.
Awesome. It may be that OctoDNS needs a change. It's a good point. I've never thought about that.
Okay, let's move. I will play with that a little bit. Another item is the artifact server progress. My action item was to do some research about what we need and what we should do. I didn't start doing it. I focus on different items, so no progress so far. And the next topic is the moving perf to the AAA cluster. It's currently running with the subdomain perf-canary.k8s.io. It looks like the data are consistent with the original perf-k8s.io. I confirmed that with the mathematic from SIG scalability. The only problem we have right now, and the team is debugging this currently, is that the people from the RBAC Google group, it looks like they can't access the namespace in AAA cluster. So if they can access, they will not have any option to update the project, the perf-. So when we will figure it out, it looks like we can switch the DNS to the AAA cluster.
So I got an email from Matt. I guess he's back in the office. You're today my yesterday or my last night. And I will try to work with him to figure out what the heck's going on.
Right. Also, the publishing bot, it looks like we have most of the things to just deploy them. There are two things problematic, and one is we currently are deploying provisioning the infrastructure with Terraform, and if we want to add some resources like storage class, Kubernetes storage class, via the Terraform, as it was suggested, then if we add the Kubernetes provisioner, we can't run the Terraform locally on our machines because the access to the Kubernetes is restricted only to Google console. So the decision right now is if we are okay with that, and if not, we need to find a solution. Any opinions?
I mean, the only solutions I see would be to make the cluster endpoint available or to not use Terraform, both of which seem distasteful.
Is this something we could try raising upstream with Terraform?
I don't think it's a Terraform problem. I think it's merely we're trying to talk to our Kubernetes API server, and we have chosen not to put our Kubernetes API server on the internet. So the choices are put it on the internet or talk to it from the secure perimeter.
Actually, I'm kind of okay with using only Google console to, it also won't be very common to provision the whole infrastructure using Terraform at this point.
And we require Cloud Shell for administering the clusters anyway, right? You can't run kubectl from your desktop. So I don't feel like it's too big a deal, but this is a chance for anybody else to say, stop forcing your crap on me.
Yep. So I would like to ask if we can get some consensus about my voice is it's okay to just run the Terraform inside the Google Cloud console. Any objections?
You're saying the consensus is to run Terraform within Cloud Console, or?
Yeah, we would have to use
within Cloud Shell, just to be specific. It's not a GUI. It's still a command line, right? But it's in the Cloud Shell.
Sorry, that was yeah, exactly.
A, I guess that's okay, but B, I'm still not 100% sold on using Terraform to manage Kubernetes resources, of which storage class is one.
So this is a great topic. This is one of those resources that is halfway between infrastructure and applications, right? Like, I'm not sure that I'm fond of using Terraform to manage deployments and services, because those things, are intended to be living resources. Storage class is really kind of not. It's really kind of part of the infrastructure. And it is really sort of part of the cluster definition. The fact that we have node pools that Terraform can manage, but storage classes that it can't, is an artifact of the implementation. But to me, they feel like the same category of things. Otherwise, I agree.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure we can always revisit this if and when we ever get to the point where we decide what to use besides Terraform, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. If there turns out to be a better something down the road, then we can consider that then.
So my suggestion is I created a pull request, which I will update. There needs to be one change, and we will see how it works.
Okay, so just to be clear, consensus is yes, Terraform and Cloud Shell. No objections.
Great.
Okay.
So that's any recurring like action item, and let's go to open discussions. And my first item there is I would like to suggest to add to our like a meeting agenda template, like additional field for action item manager. And you know, as every week, every biweekly call with the note taker, we could ask some person to be responsible just for action items. I feel like it can be very helpful because, and also to create the action items and then to put them inside the GitHub, because I feel like we can lose, and we are losing some action items during the role.
I'm not opposed to it. I'm also happy to try and take this on while I'm doing note-taking duties. It's kind of difficult for me to take notes because I want to walk and talk at the same time. So cherry picking out action items can be difficult. What I'm trying to do right now is just highlight things and assign them to people. And then that way, after the meeting, I know to go back and take everything that was assigned to people and turn it into a GitHub issue and assign it to that person. So it would be, this role would be helpful if we kind of consistently highlighted action items like that.
Any other opinions about it? Any objections? Okay, I think we can try, and from the next meeting I will update this template, and we will try to do it. I know it will be hard because there is not many people who like to do notes, so probably there won't be a lot of people who like to do action items, but we will try, and I think it can be helpful.
I think the biggest problem is the distinction between notes and good notes. Like Aaron takes great notes. I notice that I'm being assigned AIs as we're talking, which is takes some dedication. And like you said, walking and talking is hard, Aaron.
Yeah. Okay, so another topic is during the talking about the community infrastructure for kind, Ben wrote that he needs some GCS bucket with more retention than 60 days to put some artifacts, and I feel like we definitely don't have any solutions to promote. We don't have any automated way of managing the buckets for that kind of purpose, and I don't know if we can quickly have some solution for him.
So I didn't read his thread. What does he want?
So he needs some bucket where the GCB can put some artifacts with more than 60 days of retention.
Are they permanent artifacts for serving, or are they staging artifacts?
So that looks like they are not like a persistent ones, but also not only for 60 days. I think I asked, and if I didn't, I wanted to ask exactly the same thing in the issue.
My understanding, it'd be a place to host releases of kind, and he also pushes like the latest build of kind.
Is there a thread or an issue that I'm missing? I can't find it.
Yeah, I've put the link inside the agenda.
It's definitely not public, so it's consumed, but it's consumed internally by the Kubernetes project, basically. So at least it's not something that we have to support externally, and that's something that's a given.
So the reasoning for this is that there are CI jobs that use this. These CI jobs are considered release blocking. If they're important enough to be release blocking, they should probably be important enough not to use somebody's personal GCS bucket and account. So Stephen Augustus asked that we use community infrastructure to host these like latest builds of kind, as well as releases of kind.
Wouldn't that warrant us giving a storage space under the production namespace, which doesn't have the 60-day retention limit?
So I feel like
I would say that seems like my preference. I'm just finding the link now. If it's not, I mean, we can make staging, you know, we can change the retention on staging. The point was to make it small enough that people don't treat it like permanent. If we needed it to be 90 days or 120 days, I wouldn't object too hard. But it sounds to me like this is actually permanent, and we should go the other direction and say, like, it's just prod. And for the sake of history, we keep it forever. And because we only have the two, right? We have the very ephemeral 60 days or the 10-year retention.
And I'm not if I understand exactly what he needs, because it looks like he doesn't want to, or not, because if he wants to use the only images, or if he wants to use some binary artifacts. Because if he wants to use the images, I don't see any problem to use just the production bucket.
Binary artifacts.
Exactly. So that's
Kind has two kinds of artifacts right there. The images, like kinder node and stuff like that, and then there's the kind binary. Dims, I see your hand raised, but what I'm trying to get at is, like, we seem to have this well-established staging and then promotion process for images. We lack the equivalent for binary artifact. It's unclear to me whether we should take and say for people who have binary artifacts, just push straight to prod, or whether we should be coming up with some equivalent solution. Dims.
So we have an open issue somewhere in the backlog for an equivalent promoter for storage for GCS. For the time being, we do not have that. And so there are a handful of things that have been enabled to be able to push to prod, like the releng stuff, Stephen's work. The CNI project actually has a different GCS bucket that we created just for them. I think that one was open coded. I wasn't part of the review on that one, but I saw the result of it. We could do the same thing for kind here. Just make a new bucket, create a service account that can push into that bucket, and give that service account to Ben for the time being, and say, when we have the promoter in place, we'd like to take away that access and use the promoter instead.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, Tim. So I would support that.
So this should be easy and quickly doable. Is there anyone who would like to own this and do?
I'd like to look at the script, just because the CNI one was just sort of thrown in a little bit haphazardly because it was a one-off. But now that it's not a one-off anymore, I'd like to make sure that we're doing the right thing for it.
Okay. Maybe anyone.
I found the issue. I'll respond to Ben's issue and ask him if he thinks that's cool.
Anybody wants to work on this new script, I can mentor and help, and then we can ask Tim to also do.
Great point. Just to be clear, I'm not sure there's a need for a new script. I just didn't look at this original CNI special case when it was pushed in. So I came across it as I was doing something else, and I threw it at the back of my brain to come back and look at it. And then I forgot about it until just now. So I'm more than happy to have somebody else, take a look at it and do the actual PRs. This should be easy unless we need major refactoring, which we probably don't.
Okay, so let's add action item for me. I will try to find anyone who would like to help. If not, I will do it. But feel free, anyone who is here or anyone who will quickly listen our call, the topic is open and I can mentor and help with this. Okay, so Velodrome. I'm kind of curious about what is the status and what is the willingness of improve or to fix the issues which we found earlier.
Okay.
And how much work it would need to be fixed.
Right. So I have to talk on this one. Velodrome runs very old versions of Grafana and InfluxDB, both of which have many, 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 many vulnerabilities. Upgrading either of them seems to be a non-trivial task. So it's also unclear whether the way that Velodrome is architected and wired together to have these services talk to each other is in any way sane, because it appears as though exposing them to the public internet is not a good idea. It'd be nice to find some way to restrict things a lot more. So I don't have a hard estimate on how much work it is. All I can say is like the team of people that I work with have other more pressing things to work on. And we're also using as a data point the fact that we took Velodrome down and 0 people complained about it in any way, shape, or form. I personally am really sad that it's down because it's the only thing I know of that has like friendly, visible views of like data that goes back longer than 90 days about our tests and our jobs and stuff. Like Velodrome is actually this complicated thing that runs a bunch of code to also like scrape GitHub and dump stuff into a Cloud SQL store. Did anybody realize this? It took, we kind of discovered this. We've only been using it as like a Grafana and Influx thing. So it might be cool if a community member who knew Grafana and Influx kind of like stood up a more modernized version of that stack, and we could see if we could use it. But again, given the relative lack of like noise about it, we have deemed it a lower priority.
Okay.
Does that lower priority mean we can turn it off and like we can turn off the old cluster, and if we decide we want it back, somebody will go through the hurdle jumping of putting it in the new cluster?
How about I take it to get back to you on that? I think we would feel that way. There may be a question of like, do we want to save off the data before you delete the cluster?
So I can leave the data around. I would just like to decommission the old cluster. There's only 2 things left in it, one of them being perf-dash, which I will try to resolve today. The other being Velodrome. If Velodrome is deactivated, then there's literally nothing running in that old cluster. And I can like move it down to 0 nodes or something, or get rid of it entirely and just save the volumes that the Velodrome jobs were using.
Yeah, exactly because of that reason I started the discussion.
Okay. I will take that as an AI and get back to you later today, Tim.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay, so
no rush. It's been around forever.
Yes.
Okay, so the next topic is I would like to build some consensus about moving the Slack infra to our new cluster. I did like some research about it. It looks like it should be an easy thing to do. The only thing which we lack right now are the secrets. So we started the discussion yesterday, and I also discussed the topic with Katerina today. Because the cluster admins will have access to the Slack secrets. And if it's okay for us, of course, this is like only 7 people or so. And I'm okay with that, but I'm also the member of this group, so I don't want to, force anything.
Sorry, what was the question?
The question is if we are okay to put this in AAA cluster, that cluster admins, members of the cluster admins group would have access to the Slack secrets. They already have access to SSL certificates and etc. But
Is there a way to not allow us access to these secrets? I'm just curious.
I don't see.
I mean, we could we could go off and do a different key management system and give different groups access to it and not cluster admins. But I think the point of cluster admins was it's a small group of people that we trust to manage the cluster and everything in it. Like you said, you already have access to the SSL secrets, right? We didn't go far enough to try to protect that from humans yet because it's a group of about 5 people. So I feel like that's not worse than what we're already doing. And if we get better over time, we can get better holistic.
Okay.
Any objections? Anyone? Okay, so I feel like we have a consensus. The action items which we need it would be good to have the secrets and one config map into the repository. It's not present there. So I don't know who have access to this cluster and who could add this to the repository encrypted via git crypt.
Oh, I should probably take that. I don't want to, but I will.
So I think I checked all of the documents. I've put the links where these secrets are being used, in which manifest. So there is, as you can see, like 6 secrets and 1 config map, which is not present there.
Are we talking about the one for the publishing bot?
No, this is just for the Slack. This is the
Okay.
Slack event log, Slack moderator, Slack welcomer, and Slack in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then it's Aaron, not me.
And also, I have a question because at least as far as I can see now, they are all in separate namespaces, and I don't think it would be necessary to put those in separate namespaces in our AAA cluster. So I would suggest we could use just the Slack tools or Slack namespace and put it there.
Okay. I mean, why wouldn't we just keep it as is?
In different namespaces, you mean?
Yeah.
Then, as a convention right now, we would have to create 4 different directories into the repository and like write the documentation about how to deploy separately all of them. And if we would put those in one namespace, we could just write one README file with deployment instructions. And I don't see if there's like any need to have separate namespaces, but maybe I'm wrong.
Okay. I'll ask about the security implications of that.
And there's like a managed certificates there, and we would switch to use the cert manager. I asked James if it's possible. He said it is, so it should be easily done. And there is like a next topic is I start digging a little bit about 2 projects which I see in the issue with the inventory of the clusters and projects right now, and I don't have a lot of knowledge about those. And these are Kettle and Greenhouse, and these 2 are the last 2. Not counting the Pro and the Pro and Boscos. The first, which is the Kettle, it looks like it should be easy to move this.
Okay, I can talk about both of these. Kettle would maybe be like the last thing I try moving. It is very brittle and very creaky. Nobody has touched the code base in years at this point. And it has like I think it's up to a 500 gig volume for reasons that nobody has taken the time to investigate.
Can you say 2 sentences about what it is and where it runs?
So what Kettle is called the Kubernetes extract transform. It takes test results from GCS. It scrapes those down, and it also subscribes to pub/sub updates about them, and then stuffs them into a BigQuery data set, which is then that BigQuery data set is what is used to drive the triage dashboard and all of the metrics and stuff that Velodrome was displaying.
Cool. Where does it run?
It runs, I believe, in, did I not have it in the issue about Kettle? Let's see.
Is running in the k8s-gubernator /
Runs in the K8s Kubernetes cluster. That's right.
Awesome. So I have 0 context on it. It sounds like a complicated and interesting system.
I looked into the repository and I looked into the resources which it needs, and it doesn't look that hard. The only problem which I see is that BigQuery dataset, which probably would need to be moved to the managed by our organization.
The complicated part of it is because it's so creaky, there's no like quick and easy way to know whether or not it works. A complete restart of Kettle to get it like up and running again takes about 10 to 11 hours. I'm sure somebody who knew what they were doing, capable of hacking the code base, could maybe bring that down. But again, it's kind of been a lower priority thing for us. That's the only reason I recommend taking a look at that one last.
Do you mean last, like after Prow and CI and scalability, or last in the first wave before Prow and CI and scalability?
After Prow would be my advice, if we can get away with it.
I will dig a little bit more into the code and I will try to understand it a little bit better, because I'm at least as far as I looked into the code, it didn't look that hard to understand, at least.
Famous last words, my friend.
Yeah, I know. That because of that, I'm not suggesting to doing it right now, but I want to understand it.
Okay, so that's Kettle. Greenhouse is a homegrown distributed cache for Bazel. So it's something that we would deploy when we have a build cluster. So it's not something you would deploy in the AAA cluster. It's something that's solely there to service Prow jobs running in a Prow build cluster.
Yeah, that's what I understood, like reading this. So it also probably needs to run to be deployed with the Prow itself.
Not necessarily. So like I was trying to describe last week, my suggestion would be that we first focus on creating just a build cluster, basic bare bones build cluster that's capable of running like, let's say some of the image builder jobs or some of the container image promoter jobs, things that don't have to spin up E2E clusters and things that don't use Bazel. As I say it, actually, I think the image builder jobs do use Bazel. And then next we could like stand up Greenhouse and try running jobs that use Bazel and would benefit from having a Bazel cache. And next we could stand up Boscos and then provision a bunch of projects for Boscos to manage so that we could start running E2E jobs that stand up clusters in those projects. And I believe the last time we talked about this, Tim would really like us to just use the AAA cluster as the build cluster. I still feel like that's not a great idea.
I wouldn't say my thought is would really like. I would really like to understand why not.
Okay. I think we could try using it as like a trusted build cluster. The idea is we don't want to end up running like PR jobs with untrusted code. on the cluster that has potentially super sensitive secrets. That's sort of the isolation.
I get that. That seems like a completely reasonable isolation.
So we can try reusing a AAA cluster as something for like trusted jobs if you want to give that a shot. I still wouldn't necessarily recommend it. I guess I can't give a solid reason why other than paranoia.
I
But
mean,
we could try that.
So one reason might be, so we ran into that with the backup job where we ran into quotas that resulted in other things failing. And that, in my mind, could be happening. Let's say the trusted thing goes out of hand build-wise, and then, I don't know, a node restarts and we can't get another one up because of quotas. And
Right.
that would make our actual core infrastructure not work. That feels like a case that might actually happening.
Yeah, I mean that's why we regret the same cluster we use to run Prow services is where we run some of these trusted jobs that we want to have like restricted access to secrets, and we now feel like that was a bad idea because when the container image promoter hit GCR quota, it effectively prevented that node from ever pulling down any more images. Which then killed off Prow on that node until gradually we reached a point where we were unable to redeploy Prow until we created fresh nodes and added them to the cluster.
My question right now is a little bit because when we will move the publishing bot and Slack infrastructure tools, as Velodrome is for now not priority, it looks like we should start discussing the Prow, as you said, next. Because at least looking at the issue, the inventory, it doesn't look like we have any other projects right now to move.
Sure. I feel like I would focus on the ability to run Prow jobs first.
I don't understand. I don't feel like I understand really well Pro. I just 4 or 6 hours today trying to read the documentation and understand how it works. So I can't suggest anything.
So I have spent a little bit of time trying to understand the Prow architecture, and basically there's a split between the controller and the workers, and they can be in different clusters. And in fact, that's a big part of the design. Aaron, tell me if I get any of this wrong. And so the simple first step that people who are familiar with Prow are suggesting is let's give it a place to run the workers first. And then we can talk about moving the masters, the controllers, into some other place. And those don't have to be the same clusters.
Yes, correct.
I think there's a lot of action items for now, but the next meeting, I think we should spend more time about discussing some ideas about the timeline, maybe.
To get the Prow architecture right, so that means that if we decide on splitting up the builds cluster from the AAA cluster, that means Prow, the management part, could still run in the AAA cluster, but the builds and the build jobs would be in BBB or something, right?
Yeah, I am fine with that approach.
Cool.
And, you know, if as we move forward, we should consider whether if we think the builds are really untrusted code, like, do we need to run them in a different runtime? Like, we've got the gvisor sandbox stuff that, you know, is it useful for us or is it not useful, not interesting for this? But we don't have to consider that at the same time. Like, let's change one thing at a time.
Yeah. Okay, I will take an AI on trying to have a plan together for next meeting. This is kind of what I ad hoc said last meeting, and then some things happened which have taken up my time. but will hopefully give me a lot more insight into exactly what Prow needs out of a Google Cloud project. And so I'll try to have something prepared for next time.
Sounds great. And the last topic is the monitoring for AAA with Scott. We've started discussing a little bit with Scott. I suggested Scott to take initiative and suggest some things, and he did. I'm mentoring a little bit him, and I have permissions to do some stuff. So we want to have some proof of concept very soon. Scott, any update?
No, I got you the configurations you can apply. So we can try that soon. And then I posted in the Slack group about any kind of stack driver alerts that we want to get going. I don't think I got any replies last time I checked, but yeah, are there specific stack driver alerts that we can get started, either applying or either defining in Terraform or just, yeah, I mean, is it just like standard like CPU and memory usage alerts, or are there other specific kinds of alerts that the group would like to see?
My suggestion is to just start with those, and then we will iterate over it.
Cool.
To be fair, a basic check, which it's currently running external to like individuals, is just a simple uptime check. So having that would be like my first priority, I think.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Michael. I feel like starting with resources first without understanding what a normal operational workload looks like could lead to us having a lot of noise. I come from the school of thought that says if you're monitoring an application, you should be monitoring what is that application expected to be doing? Like what is the application successfully doing the work it's supposed to be doing look like, and how can you monitor that it is successfully doing that? So for the publishing bot, is it running is definitely a good bare bones step, but like, is it successfully publishing repos and stuff? This might be more of a philosophical debate, but that's just the way I'd approach it.
I agree. I just want to have something to iterate over at this point. So because I feel like we are moving this topic further away every 2 weeks, and we don't have anything. Yeah.
And generically, things like resources are the sort of thing that people have no idea how to actually decide on. Like I know for a fact that we're wasting resources in this cluster. I just haven't had the time to go through and figure out what is the right CPU allocation for the Nginx instances that are running k8s.io. I know it doesn't need as much as I've given it. So having graphs that show what the resource usage was over an extended period of time means we can go back through and say, well, on average, it's less than a half a core, so let's give it a half.
Right? Sure. I mean, like creating something that is kind of equivalent to our billing report, which shows us usage of our resources, but more up to date and with a little more fidelity than our billing report. Graphs are great. I'm opposed to like creating alerts right now. That's all.
Okay, so let's. I think that definitely we can start with graphs, and let's move discussion about alerts further during the row.
Okay, cool.
So that was the last topic from our agenda. Is there any other topic you would like to discuss today? For the first time, the second and the third, and I would suggest to give us back like 4 minutes.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you very much, everyone, for being here, and see you later in 2 weeks.
Thanks all.
Yeah.